System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Tuesday, May 27th. I am Amin TMK alongside Emoja Lil Tanky Summer. Emoja, hello. How was your long weekend? Did you have a long weekend? Did you have a good time? What's going on with you?
I kicked it with the people that are most important to me in this world. We ate great food, had wonderful fellowship. You know what I'm saying? So that's all we can do, man. Black soldiers died, so we honored them in the blackest of ways. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, and we're leftists.
Yeah, whoop some ass at Domino's or something. I ain't do that, but they know I wanted to. There it is.
Yeah, and I think people think that leftists are like, we don't have any fun, or it's like not okay to enjoy your life, or it's something like that. And that is just not the case.
What is the point of a utopia with no joy? I don't understand that shit, man. No.
Yeah, we're more. I think in general we're more turned up than your regular activists. We've been able to share fellowship and barbecues and stuff before, so I'm sure it was turned up. Yeah, but let's get into some news. You like news, right? You're in the news. You're a news guy. There was some talk, and we've been sort of discussing this, and I know I talk about this to our listeners a lot, but there is a whole other side of the political spectrum, and often for the work we do, we go into that other side of the political spectrum, and often people were saying, "Hey, this is Donald Trump. He's coming back, baby. He's about to stop these wars. It's going to be different with Donald Trump in office." Obviously, we knew that was wrong, and most of our friends as well knew that. Our listeners knew that as well. But after some, quote unquote ceasefires, some hey, we want to talk to Putin and work it out. All that seems to be out the door now. And again, talking about Palestine is we're talking about a G-side. We're talking about the biggest human rights violation in modern history, where we're talking about a lot. And it's tough to bring news to that every day because it is one of the most horrific things we've ever seen. But yesterday, and we can maybe take this with a grain of salt, but I think it's important to talk about. Hamas and U.S. officials reached a verbal understanding on the framework of a ceasefire. This was reported by DropSite. And it basically is, was one of those things. We remember we talked about this last week with the American-Israeli that was let go in terms of what was going to be given back for the hostages. Didn't happen. And it looks like the United States and Hamas worked this out. Israel said, nope, not going to happen. And which kind of goes to the original point that this is never meant to be in. This is meant to be ethnic cleansing. This is meant to be a G-side. But, I guess wanted to get your thoughts on sort of first this ceasefire, if you've heard anything about it, anything you can tell us about it, and sort of, I guess, the circle and the loops that we keep going through with sort of the Palestinian ceasefire and a return to somewhat of normalcy in Gaza.
Yeah, so what I would say about this is this is indicative of the traditional American style of deal making, right? Like, you promise these things. They're already incredibly embarrassing things for the people that are negotiating with you. You know what I'm saying? I want to remind you again, some of the positions that the United States is asking Iran to consider in the sakes of good, constructive negotiation. Give up your missile technology, right? Give up all ability to enrich uranium, right? These are things that aren't, like, at least enriching uranium, that's not even necessarily a military thing. There's all kinds of commercial applications for that, up to and included green energy. Like, don't get mad at me that nuclear power is considered green energy. I'm not here to change the terms, but it is, right? And so that's much the same of what happens with Hamas. The United States make you agree to all of these things that are actually deeply embarrassing, but you have to think more about your people than you have to think about your own personal pride. And they do these things, they get you to agree in an embarrassing things, and then they don't even honor what they agree. And that goes to the deeper American-Israeli game to show the people of Palestine that Hamas has no power, right? They'll agree to these embarrassing things that are essentially, admit defeat, a conditional surrender, right? In order to save the people. And they go out there and they sell the people that, oh, we did it. We got the ceasefire. And the planes are coming overhead, bombing people that are cheering for the ceasefire in the streets. This is not the first time this has happened in this conflict. It's not even the first time that this has happened since October 7th. We've had several times, even under the Biden administration, where ostensibly there was a peace deal that was signed. Hamas had signed a ceasefire peace deal in Egypt that was then, negotiated by the head of the CIA in Egypt, right? Everybody agreed to it. And then Israel literally was bombing people in the streets that were celebrating, yay, it's a ceasefire, right? So again, these are things to show the people that Hamas has no power. Like they can't make nothing happen. Everything happens on our terms, right? But I say again, these types of shows of naked hegemony, they work against you in the greater conversations that are being had. And again, none of this passes even the most basic sniff test. While the United States is negotiating the ceasefire with Hamas, the United States has sent 90,000 tons of armaments to Israel just in the past 600 days. 90,000 tons. What type of peace can there be if you're arming an enemy that is committing what most people in the world would consider to be genocide? You know what I'm saying? And it's no different from what's happening in Ukraine. And we'll come to that later. But this is what we're talking about. When we have people having discussions in the Knesset saying things like burn Gaza doesn't violate Knesset ethics, but then Netanyahu can go out and make statements like saying free Palestine is the equivalent of Hail Hitler, right? So burn Gaza, right, is not, that's not meant to be literal, even though we're literally doing it. And that's not an ethical violation. Okay, but free Palestine is literally equated to Nazi speech. Like, this is where we are. This is what it is to do business with the declining West. Because the only way they can make themselves feel good is to demonstrate that they don't have to honor anything. But there are countries that they have to honor their words to. And that's what we're starting to see with the Americans backing down from these trade wars with the Chinese, having to negotiate with the Russians. There was a time, even if they don't mean to keep their word, it shows that the West is in a different place because, 4 years ago, they wouldn't even negotiate it. They would have just imposed their will, and everyone would have followed unilaterally. I mean, look at Venezuela is a great example. There aren't United Nations sanctions on Venezuela right now. They're all unilateral American sanctions. And if you don't follow them, the United States banking industry will punish you. So that becomes a de facto global embargo, even though the world didn't decide this. The world just can't afford to economically make an enemy of the United States. So it's either follow the rules that we set or, be shut out yourself. How much are you willing to support Venezuela? Are you willing to forego access to all of these different American technologies, businesses, financing for your country, right? I mean, that's what America does. And that's, I think, again, a 100% representation of what we're seeing as far as the Americans negotiating with Hamas, making them believe that it is one way, and then America and Israel showing that it's, in fact, the other way.
We are not too far away from the anniversary of George Floyd's murder at the hands of Derek Chauvin. And again, this is something that happens on a pretty consistent basis throughout the United States. For anybody who's not living in the United States, there are plenty of George Floyds, plenty of Breonna Taylors out there. It happens all the time. And I just wanted to mention that because so often we see the IDF policies make its way here in the United States. And I just wanted to show this. I don't know if you had seen this yet, Tanky. I just wanted to put something up here and just show it to you. Israel now approving life sentences for 12-year-olds. UN experts express alarm at two Israeli terrorism laws that permit life imprisonment for 12-year-olds. I don't know if you can see that. I just wanted to get, kind of your thoughts on that and sort of, I don't know, like the parallels that, we kind of see like between the IDF and sort of the American, police apparatus.
Those of y'all that know me for real, you know what I'm saying? Y'all know I'm a real ass hood boy, and I've had hood ass adventures and survived some shit. You know what I'm saying? When I'm looking at this, I think it's completely indicative of the life that I led. Most of y'all know my best friend when I was young was a dude named Robert Brown, who was committed to a life in prison, for things that happened to him in his life. He was 18 years old. This is 6 years younger than that. But when you're talking about a life sentence, what difference does it make? And I just want to compare and contrast this again with the praxis of third wave feminists that talk about, oh, your cranial recognition is not 100% at these ages. But then you guys have nothing to say when it comes to the incarceration of Black boys and Palestinian boys, at the ages of 18, at the ages of 12. Where is this language, right? Where is this fire that you see in your praxis that you're online harassing and bullying people about? Oh my God, you did this, right? But then it doesn't show up for these kind of things. I think it's indicative of the move in general, right? All of this can still be seen as a eugenics argument because you want to sequester a boy at 12, right? This is 1 year before, by the way, the Hebrew year of manhood, right? Even in the Hebrew faith, you're not a man until 13. That is the age of manhood, right? So you're saying even in the cultural understanding of this being a boy in every sense of the word, that this whole life can be, and again, this is before the hope is to incarcerate and remove these people from the population before there is an opportunity for them to procreate. Because it's always been a eugenics argument. This is about population control in a very real way. Not in, again, the fake feminist, oh my God, they want the Handmaiden's Tale. Like, this is real life 12, not a hypothetical future, right? Oh my God, this is what Trump is gonna make. This is the reality that inner cities are dealing with right now, that brown people in the global South are dealing with right now. 12-year-olds being incarcerated for life, and often under the most dubious and specious of charges. Oh, this guy threw a rock. Well, he threw a rock at a fucking tank. Did it do anything? Did it slow the tank down? You know what I'm saying? Did it damage the tank? Did it threaten the lives of those people? No. This is protest in the truest sense of the word because it is literally a symbolic thing that is happening. And those kind of men are being sent to prison for life with no potential of parole, knowing everything that happens in Israeli jails. So my comment on that is, again, it's just the Israelis being honest about what they want to see. A complete depopulation by any means possible of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, Gaza. They're not here for the subordination of the Palestinian people. They're here for the destruction, the eradication, the elimination, because they need to make what they see as a pure Israel, a greater Israel that is removed of all of the Arabs, of all of the Muslims, of all of, really, let's be honest, the non-Khazarian Ashkenazi population. Because they don't even make a lot of space for Jews of other ethnicities, of other cultures. Just reminding everybody once again that Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews are not the only Jews that exist in the world. But Israel is the place for them.
And, I think that goes to the point of when these Eastern African Jews were trying to get into Israel, there is financial
sterilized.
There it is. So let's acknowledge that this is about white supremacy, and all these things are moving back towards white supremacy. And this is why it's important to have solidarity with all oppressed peoples, to the best you can. And we want to strengthen the relationship between black people in America and Palestinians, and we want to strengthen those with people of the global South.
How to resist tear gas, following Palestinian blogs in the 2000s and the 2010s. You know what I'm saying? Those are the people in the global South that had the most solidarity for people like me that were out protesting the excesses of the state as it relates to the wanton destruction of Black bodies. It was Palestinians out there teaching you, oh, this is how you get tear gas out of your eyes. You know, that had huge murals of people like George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? That were unapologetically saying Black Lives Matter. Those were Palestinian people, you know? And it's not been lost on me because most of the Black radical tradition has always had great sympathy for them. Malcolm X, you know what I'm saying? All of the Panthers always tied themselves very deeply to Palestinian cause. You saw this throughout. You know what I'm saying? Even people like James Baldwin, you know what I'm saying? By no means a radical, you know, in the traditional sense of the word, a person that still worked very hard to appeal to a certain element of whiteness, right? These are people that still, in spite of all of those things, tied themselves to the Palestinian cause at all of the detriments that those cause to your cult of personality, you know, because that's the moment. That's one of those things that you do that really brings the ire and the attention of the state, you know, talk about the Palestinian cause, talk about how unfairly they are being treated, make those comparisons about the ways that the Americans treated the indigenous Americans, right, to the ways that the Australians treated the indigenous Aborigine of Australia. Compare those to the ways that the white people from Europe that have cloaked themselves in the Zionism are dealing with the indigenous people of Palestine. And the rhetoric never changes. It's like, oh, the land was empty. The West was empty. You know, think about like that. Again, like in America, we learn about the Louisiana Purchase and think about the arrogance, right, of France deciding that all of these nations that were populated by people, the Caddo people, the Cherokee people, the Sioux, the Lakota, the Dakota, you know what I'm saying? The Pawnee, you know, all of these nations, these these Native American nations. But France saying, oh, we own Louisiana. And like, that is that same mentality. Unless this land is owned by a European culture, it is up for grabs. And that is the reality that we're seeing in this Middle East. No European owned that land, you know, and so it's free for conquest.
Yeah, something that's interesting to me is like we were talking sort of about the indigenous genocide that it occurred here in the United States, and learning about the buffalo being basically eradicated to stop the food source of the indigenous people. And this is sort of what the West does. This is the playbook that they utilize. So I wanted to show this one more video before we pivot and just kind of, you know, maybe get your reaction to it.
In this round, listen, these people are...
You know, we're still working it out, y'all. We're still working it out, but I think we're going to get it. Here we go.
Desperate, and they see a World Food Program truck coming in and they run for it. This doesn't have anything to do with Hamas or any kind of organized crime or anything. It has simply to do with the fact these people are starving to death. And so we will continue to go in. We will continue to go in with food and the kinds of supplies that we need to help the bakeries operate and make sure that we can continue to do that and hopefully be able to do more of it. But again, we can't do this unless the world community puts pressure on this. We can't be allowed to sit back and watch these people starve to death with no outside diplomatic influence to help us. These poor souls are really, really, really desperate. And, you know, having been in a food riot myself some years ago, I understand the desperation very well.
So the reason I put that up is because, as you can see, this person was a pro-Israeli member a wife of a GOP senator. So, you know, basically at this point, like it's even people who are sort of supposed to be on, I guess the conservative side or the side of, America or whatever they kind of to push across, to the average person. You're seeing even these type of people kind of push back. And I don't know if you remember the celebrity woman. She was like, she does the kids show. I can't remember her name, but she started talking about the Palestinian kids and sort of, again, this is just sort of an everyday person kind of brought into this. And now when you're seeing like this basic humanity of people, again, there is no food being allowed into Gaza, and you're hearing, this idea that Hamas is taking the goods. And I know this is ridiculous to keep even talking about this. The whole anti-Semitism is this and that, which is just always this redirect from what's happening.
Every accusation is a confession. From all the information I've been reading, with primary sources on the ground, if there's any food hoarding that's happening, if there's any that, it's not from the Hamas people. It's actually ISIS and ISIL affiliated groups that have once again magically shown up to steal these resources and to create a black market, right? So we already know, we've talked about it many times on the show, who controls those people, and it looks like a straight up quid pro quo, we'll look the other way at what you do in Gaza, maybe even set you guys up to be the new leaders of Gaza. Think about the implications of that, right? In exchange for the dissolution of Syria and allowing us to have a free hand in there pretty much in whatever way we choose to do. And so one thing I will point out, though, that I find very interesting about the clip is, as you said, it's very obvious it's a very conservative person, right? And what's catching them is the moral kind of obligation. It's still in many ways the white man's burden. Like, oh my God, these poor people, which by the way, she never says these Palestinians, right? These poor people, oh God, we have to do something. I mean, if we don't, they'll starve, right? Like, I mean, you can just hear every nonprofit, executive director that ever was, right? When they talk in that way. But again, it goes to show the primary contradictions, because Western liberalism is supposed to be against these kind of things. These are the kind of things that they normally, talk about against other nations. Oh my God, look at what Russia is doing to the poor Ukrainian children of Mariupol. Right now, you're having to now deal with the fact that what they're doing is nothing in comparison to what the Israelis are doing. I mean, there's literally live streaming videos of schools being blown up, little girls on fire.
Yeah, the hospital fire that happened 2 days ago, where people were just being burned alive, and it's hundreds of people dying on a pretty daily basis, weekly basis, yeah.
But you can't deny it now because you're seeing it in real time. Like, the Israelis are so unapologetically proud of what they're doing that they don't even make any effort to get rid of this evidence, because they don't see it as something to be ashamed of. They see it as victory. I mean, this is how you see these videos of the Israelis having barbecues right outside of Gaza. And I want to remind you, these are the type of communities that existed before October 7th, and in many ways made October 7th inevitable. The fact that these are the kind of people, I think, once again, I tie everything to blackness. I grew up in the South, and I know what it's like. I've had relatives talk about what it was like, in the olden days when all of the white people would show up for the lynching. You know what I'm saying? And it was not seen as a macabre thing at all. It was a picnic. You would bring your family out, and this is how we ensure justice, right? And this is much in that same spirit. This is watching the lynching. We're all going to throw a barbecue and have a good time, and look at how those dangerous people are being removed. Don't you feel safer without ever once being caught in how ugly this looks, right? When this kind of media is released all around the world, and largely it's the ones that are committing the crimes that are putting the evidence out. They don't see it as something to be ashamed of.
Yeah. And again, it just goes to this aspect of escalation that is happening throughout the world. These people are deeply indoctrinated, deeply propagandized. I think it's like 82% of the population is okay with sort of the ethnic cleansing that is existing right now in Gaza. And many of those people are pushing into the West Bank. And this is sort of what the cold reality is for people in Palestine right now, that, this is backed completely and supported completely by the population. There's an absolute minority of people that want sort of there to be more, or I should say less violence towards the Palestinians, which is very troubling. And I want to just mention again, I think this is going to be a little bit of a longer episode just because it's so important to kind of show the stakes of what's happening. And I was talking to Keita about this a little earlier. People are always sending me like, hey, check out this influencer, check out this video that someone said, or check out this TikTok that someone said. And again, I'm here for, like, I don't think that you have to be some sort of geopolitical analyst to say something that is poignant and important. And I'm not trying to like poo-poo people at all. There's a lot of, we post TikToks and there's a lot of cool stuff out there. But it's always very easy to kind of help you along to sort of this idea that we're close to a victory, or that there is a way to win soon, or that there is not.
Just
this is the nitty gritty
away from winning.
This is just the nitty gritty of geopolitics, and nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to because it goes back to this point of like, people think they can change the world, and that's just a silly notion. You cannot change the world. You can barely change your community. And I don't know if you heard about this, the doomsday clock. It's this clock by scientists that show how close we are to doomsday. And it's like always at like 11:59 and 52 seconds or something. But it's at 11:59, not just because of the ecological collapse, which, scientists are into, but just the state of war, and not only state of war, but the capabilities of countries and what they have. And Israel is escalating everywhere else in the world because of this. This is why we see the Ansarallah movement in Yemen. This is why we saw the Northern Resistance in Lebanon, and why we can continue to see war and struggle in the Middle East. And I'm just going to pivot over to Ukraine and Russia, because this is, again, something we want our listeners to pay attention to and to care about, because there was a time we talked about when Joe Biden was in the presidency, and it was like, oh boy, he's giving them, the go ahead to shoot missiles into Russia. This is crazy, but hey, Trump, obviously not a good person in any way, but at least maybe we will see some sort of de-escalation in Russia, because Russia is a very dangerous country to be at war with. Well, just want to show us this right here, if I can. I don't know why this little buddy's here. Ta-da. How about that? Yeah, you seeing that? Well, I just had it. Sorry. How about that? Breaking: Germany, France, Britain, and the United States have officially lifted all restrictions on long-range weapons for Ukraine. Ukraine will now likely strike deep inside of Russian territory using Western weapons. That is via the current report. That's what the report is, my friend. We went through this with Joe Biden, the escalation towards World War III, nuclear powers, peer adversaries, blah, 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 blah. Just sort of your reaction to this, and in general, what's going on with Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's almost as if what's happening is the chaos play, right? When you realize there's nothing left to do in a rational way to win, there's a school of war that suggests insert chaos into the battlefield because nobody's prepared for that. And, the most prepared to deal with change will be the one that is the victor, right? It's not my personal school, but it's a school of theory that exists. The thing that I would say about all of it, and what I mean by that is, so first I want to rebut that this is something that just happened, right? Because the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, clarified Tuesday that, and this is a quote, the issue of limiting the change of deployed weapons played a role a few months and few years ago. As far as I know, and as I've said yesterday, the countries that imposed range limitations have long since abandoned these requirements. So when they want to make like this is something like, oh my God, the Russians bombed Ukraine and we had to change. That's just a fucking lie. Like, once again, if you're listening to the words of the Western leaders, this is the German chancellor, okay? He was just elected, okay? And he's already saying, nah, we had already. So like when the United States is like, oh, let's have peace talks, right? But I want to say again, this is why this represents chaos theory. We talked about in the last episode how the United States is preparing their Golden Dome defense, which is actually some bullshit. Like, it doesn't exist. It's a money grab, right? Because Russian missile technology by far outpaces the United States. I mean, this is not hyperbolic. This is not me trying to pick a side. This is me telling you objective military truth. Okay? The Americans have
It's not hyperbolic, it's hypersonic.
There it is, right? There is nothing. I mean, there was a video this weekend of the Russians once again just fucking decimating an American Patriot system, right, in Kyiv. And there are certain telltales where you know that the Patriot system was lost, right? And for me, what I like to say is, you see this sometimes in gunplay. Like a solid shooter will take a shot, and that's it. You know that he probably hit his target. You know what it was. A shooter that is panicked, you're just putting everything out because you hope that it hits something. And you could see the video of the Patriot system in Kyiv just fire all of its missiles because it knew it had been missile locked. And it's just hoping like one of these interceptors, and it didn't. And you could just see the Patriot blow up, which they keep these things in the middle of Kyiv, in the middle of the city, literally making human shields of everybody that is next to these interceptors, right? And just once again, these are the things that the Americans are doing, or at least allowing the Ukrainians to do in their name. This is the best that America has. Patriot and THAAD are the best that the Americans have. And the Russians are hitting them whenever they want. The Russians already changed their nuclear doctrine more than a year ago. Again, we talked about it on the show to say that anyone that is providing these missiles that are being used in a theater of war has the ability to be brought under fire. That's not even an unrational position. The Americans are utilizing much the same strategy in Yemen, right? They're saying the Yemenis are firing on Israel, and so we reserve the right to bomb Yemen whenever we want. We can go far, and we can go deep, and we can penetrate, all that macho bullshit that the Secretary of Defense likes to say, oh boy, you got to pause on pretty much anything that boy says. At any rate, man, Republicans and grinder culture.
Oh boy, no, don't get started into that. Salacious news. We don't do that.
Right,
but I just want to say, like, again, I want to go back sort of to this idea of like, Trump came out, right? He came out the other day and he was like, not in the grinder way, he came out and talked about something, right? And he said, Putin is, I don't know what's gotten into him. He's bombing people while we're talking. And, I don't like that. I'm very upset. I'll try to find the video.
But Netanyahu. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right. But it is sort of the symbol of, like, hey, like we're ready to go back in this, kind of capacity. And, I think this, and there was this, conversation around, Putin having an attempt on his life, we don't know exactly what happened and maybe we'll never know, but there definitely was drones that entered in from Ukraine and this escalation occurs. And I just want to bring it back to this because I think special military operation, that right there, they try to make it seem like it's Russian propaganda, but I really feel like it's important to acknowledge that Russia does not view this war in Ukraine as the war.
Here's the thing to think about, right? When they say special military operation, I think it means exactly what you're saying. It's just a special military operation. It's not the same as war. Ask yourself this thing. Do you think the Russians only have one Orishnik missile for those of you that don't remember, the Orishnik missile system was the multiple re-entry vehicle, that they fired in Ukraine less than a year ago, that came down somewhere between Mach 8 and Mach 12, and burrowed white hot destructive missile warheads into almost the core of the, you know what I'm saying? I mean, buried deep into the crust, right? The core is a way exaggeration, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think they only had one? Why is it they haven't used others? You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you can acknowledge that they have these type of missiles that are just not able to be defeated with contemporary missile technology, they're not even using them. It's a special military operation. Because if they wanted to, they could let these things rain anytime they wanted, Only they know how many of them have. But I can promise you it's more than one.
And it's not the only thing they have that can take out Kyiv. It's not like that's so far that's their ace in the hole. But I mean, I don't need to use
in
that.
A theater of war, like not on some.
Of course, who knows who got? Anybody could have extra wowie zowie X spacecraft somewhere, X missiles. I don't know. But we again, my great analysis. And I just go back to the special military operation for that reason, like you mentioned, and also that this is also about the people of the Donbass. Like we lose track of why the special military operation is happening, why Ukraine was chosen to be sort of this proxy. It's been there since the 1993. It's been Trump was giving them the javelins. He talks about that all the time. While Obama was giving them blankets and all this stuff. Like that's the weird flex, but okay. And then, you have, again, I just want to bring it back to this one thing. This is a video I'm going to show, I'll let you react and we'll start winding down. The people of the Donbass are not allowed to practice their religion, dude. That is messed up. That's not okay. That is religious persecution.
About, like, Dagestan, where they're practicing Islam, right? We're talking about Eastern Orthodox Christianity, man. Russian Orthodox.
This is Russia.
Yeah.
It's got all kinds of different religions. It's got all kinds of ethnic groups. Yeah. It's got all kinds of this and all kinds of that. It's another melting pot. And I just want to see, this is what is going on, basically. Like in the Donbass right now, all the time. Elderly people. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I just wanted to show that.
There's a reason why Zelensky won't have elections.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, these are Russian Orthodox Christians. These are the people that are the majority religion within your area. Again, the Donbass area. Okay. And again, I'm not even a Christian, but I do believe in religious freedoms. And I believe, and again, that's why Russia's winning in places like Chechnya and Dagestan. That's why they win in Eastern Russia, where it's way more Asiatic. It's not blonde hair and blue eyes. That don't exist. You know what I mean? Because this is the melting pot, and Russia understand. And again, they don't like when I compliment Russia. It's like every time you say something nice about Russia, you're getting a couple rubles. No, their society is old. It is full of art and culture and beautiful, wonderful aspects of society. And the birth of communism in many ways. And it's just like, for 1 second, think to yourself, maybe Russia was right on this. Maybe they're there actually to protect people. And maybe the United States and Volodymyr Zelensky, who's playing a piano with his wing wang, that's what's okay. That's all right. And the fact is, that's an unreal world. It's an unreal dystopian world of fake leaders and fake propaganda. And at the end of the day, there are people who are willing to stand on business, and Russia is doing that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I would say as it relates to those things. It's not even about right or wrong or agreeing with the culture. Like, it's so funny to me that, again, all of the multicultural liberals out there, that believe that all of these cultures should be respected. But then where's the respect for Russian culture? Well, they don't honor these things. That's not their culture. Their culture does things different from our culture, and that's okay too. Like you have to get out, not saying that it's you that's what you're suggesting, but like this belief that Western cultural contemporary standards are the preeminent and in fact preferred way of dealing with human rights in the world. There are lots of different ways, lots of different cultures that have thought about this for quite some time as to how they want to approach the world. And that's what I try to make space for. The other thing I would say, as you mentioned it, like, the fact that there are even rumors that Zelensky had something to do with this presumed assassination attempt on Putin. Now, what do you think is easier, right? Be a reasonable, logical person as a viewer of this show. Do you think it's easier for someone like Zelensky to touch Putin? Or do you think it's easier for someone like Putin to touch Zelensky? Now, why do we hear about all these attempts on Putin's life? And this ain't the first time. Let's be honest. Everybody was trying to hope that homeboy in Bakhmut, was going to turn and try to kill Putin, and all of that. The fact of the matter is, you don't hear about the Russians trying to do these things because they're still trying to handle this situation in a gloves on type situation as opposed to gloves off, because they are doing the opposite of the Americans. They are not practicing chaos theory. Like chaos theory would say, fuck it. Ukraine is a mess right now. Pop Zelensky and see what happens. Maybe the new leader will be better. Who knows what will happen.
But chaos is good for us.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the Russians are doing literally the exact opposite of that because they realize that Zelensky's creating so many enemies on his fucking own. They probably don't have to do nothing. There are so many reasons why Zelensky is opposed to ending this war, not least of which being what happens when, however large this army is, because we've heard all kinds of different numbers about the remaining strength of the Ukrainian army, right? And what they're going to do to him, to Zelensky, when this war ends because of the ways that they were treated. You have generals that are going on the record of saying, I feel like most of the upper leadership are going to burn in hell. And we've talked about that on here before too. Like those guys, when the war is done fighting with the Russians, I don't think their war is going to be over at all. I think they're going to have a whole nother war. And I think that most of the Ukrainian leadership fears a great deal what will happen when these soldiers don't have Russians to fight anymore.
Yeah, they're very long tensions that go back some time. This is also happening, in other. I'm not going to get into India and Pakistan and all the other ethnic groups, the Kurds, the Uyghurs. We can go on and on. This is what happens when it's old ethnic differences. This is, what you always say this. Don't involve yourself in someone else's civil war. Not a good look. I think that when this does end, whatever that end is, in either conflict, it's going to be a paradigm shift within the world, because it has to be, because of how long it's taken to get here. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. Hit us up on our Podbean site if you're just on, Chrome or Firefox or something like that. You can hit us up on our Patreon, patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. Shout out to our patrons. Y'all the real heroes. I really appreciate y'all. We're trying to create a community in there. It's our community is great. I got to do a better job. I'm going to get there. But I want to also give a shout out both these books actually right here: Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins from Umoja. You can always go to innercityleft.com to check that out. And of course, Dr. CBS, Black Scare, Red Scare, available everywhere. And what else am I missing? Anything else?
Stay locked in, baby. Stay frosty.
Please, find our music everywhere you find music. Just type in our names, Lil Tanky. Me and TMK, we have a new song dropping tomorrow called Locked In. Give us a stream, purchase it if you can. Because, we're just artists and activists, and we're trying to get it any way we can without, having to rely always on the exploitations of the 9-to-5 game, which, of course, we know many of y'all have to do. And yes, final thoughts. What did I miss? What did we miss? Tanky?
I mean, there is a reason why that thing stay at 11.59, 59, 99, 99. I hate when people think that, people that talk about geopolitics are alarmists. We're really telling you, most people have no idea how unstable this world is, man. The fact that it's elephants dancing on a razor blade, and that is what everything is hinging on right now.
The fellowship is but the edge of a knife.
It is.
Stray but a little.
Man.
Yeah, you know what it is. Lord of the Rings referenced. For Mojo Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace. System riding to the core. Yeah.
Reppin' Inner City Left.